Okay, hello everybody, and glad to join this conference. So previous presentation by Philips Medisize was a great transition to this topic, and I've prepared a few insights for you, which I'm glad to share now in this session. So I'm from company Stardust Insights. We are from Vienna. I'm Chief Operating Officer. And just to give you a short context into what we are doing and how we actually come up with the insights I want to present to you. So very shortly, what we truly believe in our company is that innovation is a driver of a competitive advantage, and for sure startups and tech companies are in a front seat, not always maybe in the driver's seat, but definitely sitting next to the driver. And we believe that collaboration between corporates and startups can bring great innovation into this world. As a company, we are a data science company, so we never come up with some assumptions based on, let's say, analysts or experts we have in the company, but we always drive insights from actual activities of startups and innovative companies, and we analyze it with the help of big data and analytics to really see, okay, where the activity is happening and how startups contribute to the new world of innovation in different industries. And as you can see, we are active across different sectors, from pharmaceutical to logistics to automotive, because we always look into the technologies on the horizontal level, believing that they can be drivers of innovation in different industries. So for this conference, since we were working with the Pharmapack to attract more startups to the conference itself, which you will meet few of them also in the pitching session afterwards. But for this particular conference, we conducted a study of 1,100 startups and innovative companies. So we deeply analyzed them with our big data analytics tool, which we call Startup Search Engine. So we want to compare a bit what would be the difference and how the technologies, the top technologies are different in these sectors. So let's just zoom in and look into the data. So first, some insights into age, size, and geographical distribution. So on the left side, you can see the analysis of these companies based on their size and age. And size we always analyze based on the growth of the employees in the companies. Usually we also go a bit deeper to analyze each company on the how fast it's growing relatively per year, relatively to its employee number. But here you can see that the startup sector is showing a lot of activity in terms of innovations in a packaging industry, in the pharmaceutical packaging. And below you can see some age distribution of these companies, and you can see, very interesting to see some spikes of activity and some downfalls. Of course, some downfalls you can very clearly see, for example, in 2008 and closer to 2012, but at the same time you also see the spikes of the activity happening, especially in the last 3 years. Of course, it goes down in 2018 and 17, but this is just due to data collection process, which is not yet available for this short period of time. And then we looked into geographical distribution to see to build some geographical heat maps of startup activities. I will show you the heat maps themselves, but here are some insight into some of the top cities of the activities and some of the top countries distribution. But I suggest that we even zoom it in further to see it on the map. And as far as I know, this presentation will be public, so you can always look into it afterwards. So here, very interesting was for us also to see, here we built this heat map really based on the actual activity of this 1,100 companies. And what's very interesting inside, once we build such heat maps for different industries, we always, or at least in 90% of the cases, we have huge bubble around San Francisco area. I don't think we need to explain why, but in these cases you see, of course there's a lot of heat there, but it's not one of the biggest hubs. Once we did the same research focusing more on medical device side, then we saw different distribution and much more heat in this area. And here you see in the United States there are a few bubbles. Again, New York area is very logical in many cases, and Chicago area, and also on the border with Canada. In Europe, also interesting to see the activity heating around, of course, London, Great Britain. Then we see a big bubble around Switzerland. And of course, it pulls together other cities and other hubs. But also we see Netherlands and so on and so forth, and quite interesting activity in India. So we have even zoomed in versions of this to really look into it in more detail. And what's important, we always analyze this young company activity, right, startup activity, based on city activity and not really country activity, because as we know from our work is that cities are actually the builders of startup ecosystem. So let's say in different countries there might be different fragmented startup ecosystems, and they are much more city-based than just centralized country-based. This is just due to how the financing happening in these communities, how do companies interact with these communities, and so on. Then also zooming in to see how the heat around these areas is even more gets distributed. As I said, it's quite to expect around New York, Chicago area, and interesting to see how this, even though in a classical sense, we know even in the United States there are a few also major startup hubs that used to be. So if you would see 10 years ago, it would be everything around San Francisco area, New York area, Chicago, and so on, in Massachusetts as well. But now you see that if we compare this heat map with the one which is 5 years ago, you see that the startup activity and startup communities, they get more fragmented, and more activities emerge in individual cities and hub. And this is just shows that the local ecosystems such as university, technology transfer units, or corporates are getting more and more active in this area to build the local ecosystem and to attract startups there. And also India. Here is also quite interesting and obvious around Bangalore, Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Mumbai, of course. These are the most hits. And here in India, you see quite classical approach that there are 4 to 5 major hubs that attract all attention, whereas in US we already saw in Europe this more fragmented and distributed community. And now the question is, in what topics do startups invest in? So these, the next slides will show you, I will go one back. So basically what we did with this 1,100 companies, as I said, we analyzed them semantically to really see about what kind of innovation they are talking about in the pharma packaging industry. And then we built some clusters around this innovation. So now I want to show you top 7, 8 clusters. And also we did a weighting of these clusters to see semantically, okay, relative to each other, which ones are stronger in the startup community and which are still a bit weaker. So we have cluster around smart packaging, which was showing the strongest one. Then topics around serialization. Then we go into tamper-evident packaging. Packaging that connects with the topic of adherence control. Then we are talking about digitalization of the supply chain. Of course, it's a topic that comes across all these areas, but there we looked into some particular cases, which I will show you in the next slide. Then talking about personalized packaging and unit dose packaging. And also other topics we clustered a bit into other areas just to show you some kind of features that startups are also driving and working on. So here we're talking about child resistance, senior friendliness, eco-friendliness, which was addressed in some of the awards winners today, biosensors, and so on. And one more topic is, and as you see, we looked across the whole supply chain here, coming from manufacturing and ending up with the consumer needs and what is driving the consumer. Here we also have a topic of packaging postponement. So I would like to zoom into each of these areas. And for that, we use a model which we call innovation map. So the model of the innovation map is really to show, again, on what kind of innovation groups or on what topics do startups invest in, and to break it down even further to look into, okay, in these innovation areas, what are the application groups that startups are working on, or what are the added values that startups are working on. And we use this blueprint visualization just to show that kind of each area is, of course, interconnected with one another, and it opens the doors for another areas. So if we're talking about serialization, then of course here the topic of traceability and trackability comes into mind, and you can see some overview of technologies that startups use, starting from RFID and other trace and track technologies, and what kind of questions do startups raise when they talk about serialization. The next one is about talking about packaging postponement. Of course, it's a big topic, and it has been addressed a lot in FMCG sector and in the food tech sector, but also we see, as data shows, it also comes up in the pharmaceutical packaging area, and it's talking about having possibility to provide on-demand supply, and how do startups make sure that it's enabled in already on a warehousing and storage stage. And you see kind of the solutions around the dimensioning recognition and automated packing that contribute to this topic. When talking about digitalization of supply chain, as you probably heard a lot in the media, if you read something about startup activity, for sure you came up across blockchain technology in different sectors and industries, and of course it comes also to the whole logistics, supply chain, and packaging industry as well. So in this case, we saw the biggest activities on a blockchain side, using blockchain for tracking, for traceability and trackability of the whole supply chain process. Then we're coming to the topic of tamper-evident packaging. So now we are talking about some specific qualities of the package itself, and what are the areas that startups are looking into or trying to experiment and innovate. So you can see a lot about topics about freshness, about self-expiring packaging, and about temperature and climate stable packaging. again, here is the topic of a smart packaging, which interacts with the other topics as well. But here we looked even more on the consumer side. How does the consumer interact with the packaging? And here comes again the topics of using RFID, NFC technologies. Of course, the questions that startups posed is how they can be as sick as possible for as thin as possible for the sector and so on. But the big topic is evolving around the whole huge topic of Internet of Packaging, because it's not just a topic of a sensor, it's a topic of a data and data management, data integration, and this topic has been raised a lot in this conference. So these are some key questions that we see startups are asking themselves and they are trying to innovate in. And coming to topic of personalization, and this topic is not just specific to the industry itself. This topic we see across many industries, especially when it comes to fast-moving consumer goods as well. This is a huge shift to the personalization, and it doesn't only concern now products, it also comes to the packaging. And here in this industry we see the topics of personalized medicine and more even into unit dose packaging. And last but not least, this also topic was interesting to hear a lot during the conference and few sessions about adherence control and how packaging can contribute to this topic. And here we can see some more, to say, gimmicks or features that can help patients to be more adherent. And especially here we see more even communication between the doctor and the patient when this topic comes up in the startup-driven activity. So this is a summary of the whole research we did. As I said, these are top innovation areas. So of course there has been more inputs into this, but we just decided to show it in kind of really areas that come up the most often. And as I said previously, we did a research also with the same methodology on packaging industry itself. And I just wanted to share with you the same model we did for that topic. I will not get into too much detail. I think all of, this information is also published on our research blog, which you can find on StartUs Insights. And if you go to the blog section, you will see different reports of this sort for different sectors and industries. But if when we took the packaging industry in general, we see some things that that come up in both maps, right? But some things that are much more consumer-centric. So we have topics such as social branding, again, custom packaging, coming to the topic of interactive packaging when the consumers can interact, and also topics of the production itself, such as flexible packaging. And the smart packaging comes up in both topics, as you see. And again, the topic of sustainable materials, which also came up actually in a previous research, but its weight was lesser than the weight of the other areas that I introduced in the previous innovation map. So with this, I would like to end my presentation. You see you can find, as I said, the blog on Stardust. If you go StartUsInsights.com or just StartUs Insights in Google, you can see different publications across different industries that we did. And again, the approach that is used here, some things might be a bit interesting. Some things might raise some new questions. That's always our goal. And we don't use the top-down approach that, let's say, some consulting companies would use by interviewing some experts and so on and conducting some outcomes and showing. We really look into the real data, and we look into how these companies communicate these topics themselves. And based on that, we do the outcomes you saw. So no assumptions, just questions. And I hope this was helpful for you, and look forward to interacting you during the conference. Thank you.